What's going on, boys? Mick here with another video, and in this one we're primarily going to focus on some Elder Scrolls 6 leaks that have been released recently, looking at some things that Bethesda have done and talking about it. So I was scrolling through the Microsoft Store on the PC over the holidays, and I came across the Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition. Now this is the same game that they've released before. It's going to include all the DLCs in one title with some Creation Club assets, you know, same stuff that everybody's probably already played before since the game has been out for over 10 years now.
It's been 84 years.
With Fallout 4 releasing this title, it is probably due to the new Fallout TV show that they've come out with, trying to capitalise on that hype from returning players that are enjoying the show, and maybe some people that haven't gamed before that really love the TV show and want to give it a try. Bethesda are definitely going to capitalise on this by re-releasing the Fallout Anniversary Edition.
Congratulations, Mr. Krabs.
Hello, I like money.
Now, for hardcore fans like us, this is absolutely tiresome. I mean, the last title that Bethesda came out with for, you know, RPGs like Fallout, like Skyrim, was Starfield. As we all know, Starfield was not received well by the community. There was a lot of complaints that it was bland, generic NPCs, there was some politics thrown in there. It was very, like, safe. You couldn't really do some of the RPG elements that we'd seen in previous Fallout games, such as killing every NPC or taking the bad route, whatever you want to call it. Just a very safe and bland RPG that we're not used to seeing from Bethesda, who really do make good titles despite some bugs in some of these titles. Fallout 4, Skyrim, Fallout 3, New Vegas, all extremely good RPGs and titles. Bethesda are definitely, like I said, capitalizing on this TV show thing while everybody is, you know, focused on where this next title's coming from. You know, Bethesda are like releasing this TV show, re-releasing anniversary editions, and just hoping we don't pay attention, but the entire community is wondering where Elder Scrolls 6 is. I mean, I understand that some of these titles, these new ones from Bethesda, are going to be highly optimistic. They're going to be very large, very in-depth, hopefully to the kind of scale that we sing Baldur's Gate 3 to when it comes to voice lines and character choices. But all in all, this is going to be a very, you know, optimistic title from them, so it's going to take a while. We do understand that. But the last, you know, teaser we had of Elder Scrolls 6, despite knowing it's already in development, was 7-8 years ago, I think. So if it comes to Bethesda, you can also make the argument that, yes, they made Indiana Jones, we have Fallout 76, we have ESO, but that is not what the fans are focused on, and it's important that we make that distinction, that we are looking for these mainline single-player RPG titles such as Fallout and Skyrim. At the recent Game Awards that Claire Obscure won nearly everything, they had this, like, background at the very end when they do this big reveal. They had a background of like scenic mountains and water that kind of looked like Hammerfell, and then Todd Howard came on stage, and it was just set up for the perfect ES6 release announcement, whatever, development teaser. And then they go and show Highguard, which is just another hero shooter loot box dumb shit thing that nobody's gonna play. And, you know, when it comes to the Game Awards and this final, like, announcement, this last second thing, and they set everything up perfect, and they just come out with another generic Concord-like hero shooter that everybody's seen and played before, it's just a slap in the fans' face. You know, gaming is just getting really bad, and it's mostly for the fans. It's for the people that play the games. It just gets worse and worse every year, and everybody else seems to be having a good time. When it comes to Bethesda then, it is also good to see when we had the Oblivion Remastered drop. That was a shadow drop. We got the trailer and the game on the same day.
The best part of my job is that I get to be the one to announce that the Oblivion Remaster will be available today.
Todd Howard then came out and said, quote, to a journalist, that this was a test, so we can safely assume that there's a chance that ES6 will be shadow dropped. I mean, it would be the biggest shadow drop in gaming history. It would be fantastic. Although with leakers and the amount of people that are working there, and with Bethesda leaks being, you know, quite common in the past, it's hard to see it happening, but you never know. These companies can have it on lock and just release a big title like this last second, and, you know, it happens. Look, Bethesda's been on a pretty downhill slope when it comes to their RPG titles, and now what I mean by that is the games have progressively got worse. That doesn't mean the games are bad at all. Fallout 4 is a great title, it's fun, it's action driven, but we did lose some of those RPG elements that we did enjoy, and some of the voice lines and player choices got a little bit hindered or kind of gated because they did use voice lines for the character. Now, when you use voice lines for the actual playable character itself, you're relying on a voice actor, and that can start limiting what you have for options. And once you get too far deep into development, you can't turn back, especially with the work the voice actors put in. That being said, Fallout 4 was a great title, although we do kind of all en masse agree that Fallout New Vegas was a fan favourite. Now, the problem with that is we'd love to see a Fallout New Vegas 2, but it's never going to happen because Todd Howard's ego is just too high. Now, no disrespect to the guy, but that is true. He hates the fact that Fallout New Vegas is a fan favourite, because he didn't make it. And all in all, Todd Howard's kind of attitude has been getting more angry over time. You know, his baby, his dream game was Starfield, and when that was released, I mean, it was not received well at all. With the generic NPCs and the kind of bland world design and the bad combat, you know, everything can be kind of attributed to, you know, if you look at everything as a whole, it can attribute to a bad title, but he was not happy with that whatsoever. Listen, do I think Todd Howard slowed down development out of spite? Obviously not, but I do feel like he's had a bad run of it when it's coming up to the, you know, modern times of gaming. You know, he had a really good run, and then the 2015 Game Awards kind of soured him, then the Fallout New Vegas thing that everybody loved, but it was made by Obsidian, kind of soured him, and then, you know, Starfield not delivering the standard that he thought it was going to deliver to really did sour him. All I'm not saying though, Bethesda is going to have to deliver Elder Scrolls 6 at some time, whether that's a shadow drop or a teaser in early year. And the reason I say that, we'll get on to a second when we do finally look at these leaks, that there might be some information for the fans in early 2026 for Elder Scrolls 6. We don't know if this is true, but you know, it does look like it might be possible. That being said though, they are going to have to release this game at some point, and with the time it's taken and the, you know, the optimistic attitude they've had for ES6 and the fans' outcry for ES6, they have a really, really big pair of shoes to fill. You know, when it comes to Bethesda and letting the fans down, we've seen it happen before. You know, they were a perfect development company and they were always delivering these, you know, fan favorite titles, you know, despite some outliers when it came to Fallout 4 critics and stuff like that, but they have always been known for delivering these high quality titles. Then we had Starfield, and it just went to show that Bethesda is, you know, Bethesda bleeds. They're just like everybody else and they can make mistakes. Personally, I didn't mind Starfield. You know, I did play a lot of it. I think I got all the achievements before the DLC came out, but at the time I wasn't really invested in it. I wasn't dying to play it again. I wasn't sitting forward listening to everything. It was just like a fun little game to play. It wasn't something I would compare to Skyrim or Fallout in a sense. The reason I'm bringing up old Bethesda and stuff they've done in the past is because I want to get into my main point of concern, the inspiration for this video, and that is the thought of Elder Scrolls 6. Bethesda, like I have said and previously in the video, they have made great titles, you know, coming up to this. They have made good video games between Skyrim and now, but the main point of concern is this Elder Scrolls 6 release and how I feel Bethesda are going to handle it and what I think will happen. Okay guys, as you can see, this is from the Gameverse. These are the leaks I'm talking about. This came from 4chan, which, as we know, 4chan can be trusted on a lot of things somehow. But in my personal opinion, these leaks are true. I do think there's truth to them. I do think it's likely. I don't know if it's 100% certain, but these leaks to me, and, you know, experience with Bethesda titles in the past and stuff we've read online, these leaks scream truth to me, so we'll just get into them. Elder Scrolls 6 Iliac, the setting will be Hammerfell, like we talked about, and coastal High Rock Iliac Bay. There's going to be 11 major cities and 2 fortress cities. This sounds fantastic. This really does open up the idea of a massive world that we were talking about, that optimistic title that they had to go for. Because when you think about Bethesda, anytime they make a new game, it is in their mind that the players want bigger and better. They want more to explore. They want more places to go, more people to meet. They want more game time. They want more time inside that title. And obviously with advancements of technology and games going on and new engines and new developers, this is possible. So I do believe that Bethesda are going to utilize everything they have to ensure we get a bigger and better world when it comes to Elder Scrolls 6. There's going to be shipbuilding and sailing. Now, the reason I think this is true is because despite Starfield not being a well-received title, we can look at that for what kind of technology and what kind of ideas and where everybody's art direction is at the time. And Starfield's a good indicator of some of the things that might carry over to Elder Scrolls 6. One of the things that we had on Starfield was shipbuilding. You know, you could build your spaceship with massive customization options. You know, it was almost like a separate video game in itself. Really well done and good, in my opinion. I do feel like it was really detailed. There was a lot to do. You could really had so much more options of customization in any other shipbuilding sequence that we've seen in video games before. So I do think Starfield did this well, and I do think we're going to see it in Elder Scrolls 6, similar to like an Assassin's Creed Black Flag ship, something like that. Going to be settlement building like we've seen in Fallout 4. Again, I do see this happening. Fallout 4's settlement building was quite popular. I know there's some people that didn't like it. It didn't add to the game, but settlement building in terms of Fallout 4 did quite well, so I do see this happening. Procedural generation for Iliac Bay. So we're going to see procedural generation, apparently, according to these leaks. That's going to be like islands or land masses and stuff, I do believe. So you can sail out and visit procedurally generated islands with different places on it and different loot and stuff like that. The reason I see this happening is because we've seen it in Starfield. I do feel like Starfield relied way too much on procedural generation. It wasn't good. It almost felt really lifeless at times. Yeah, it was good to be able to say we had, 30 star systems with all their planets and all their moons, but at the same time, once you went to, a few, you kind of seen them all. So hopefully they do procedural generation a little bit better in this title, but I do see it happening. Factions then are going to be the Thieves Guild, the Dark Brotherhood, the Fighters Guild, and the Mages Guild. So these are all factions that we've seen in the past. I don't know if we call them factions, more like guilds, but we are going to see what we've seen in Skyrim before, the usual stuff, so this will be good to do. Imperial Cult and the Temple of Three, not joinable, so they're going to be non-joinable factions, but they are going to probably allude to the story if these leaks are true. Crowns and Forebearers are mutually exclusive factions. The internal codename for this title is White Beach, so usually when leaks come out and they know the codename for the developers that they use when they're creating the title, this usually leads to people believing it a lot more. But then again, if you were faking leaks, you would throw in a codename as well, so who knows. Some details align with older leaks like ships and sailing. So other leaks that we've seen in the past before these were announced, we did see shipbuilding and sailing be announced in those leaks before. So this kind of also alludes to the truthfulness I was talking about, because we can start matching up different pieces of evidence and the story starts becoming a lot more believable. Again, if you were faking leaks, you would use stuff that came out in the past, but I do feel like these are true. Going on to not included, it's going to be sword singing for player, not sure what that is. Dwemer Return, Orsinium, generic Starfield style NPCs. So this is a big one here, generic Starfield style NPCs. I think I mentioned this earlier in the video. That was a big concern for people when it came to Starfield. The NPCs felt really dead, generic, bland, ugly, stuff like that. It really didn't help with the immersion in an RPG experience. The story's going to revolve around Nocturnal, Periite, and an Akaviri artifact. Crowns and Forebears oppose the Thalmor and Almeri invasion. World rulers, towns, and outcomes change based on faction choices. This sounds amazing. I love that RPG element there. Main ending is similar, but the paths will differ. This is going to be something like we've seen in Skyrim, where the main ending is kind of like a solid main ending for the character, but different paths and choices will differ, in a small way. This isn't too bad. We're used to it. Nobody really complained. It's not exactly like, a multiple ending title that's going to be made. This is just going to be separate paths, but that's fine. World and Tech then, it's going to be an open world game, as we all know, as we hoped. And imagine it was a linear story. I think many people would have issues with that. Cities and interiors are mostly seamless with a few load zones. Now we do know Bethesda and their loading zones. That's never going to go, in my opinion. When it comes to their design and their kind of signature, load zones are always going to be there in a Bethesda title. Procedural gen areas separate from the handcrafted zones. This is good. Again, I hope they don't overdo this. I really don't want to see too much procedural generation in this title. So going on to the main part that I mentioned earlier, this is the marketing leaks. This is very sketchy, so take this with a grain of salt. Marketing allegedly starts in January 2026, so that's, in a few days. Full reveal the Summer Showcase 2026, targeting Q1 27. This here sounds about right to me. Maybe late 2027, but this isn't too far off. So like I said earlier, I do believe these leaks have some truth to them, if not a lot of truth to them. They just do scream like actual good leaks when it comes to this title. Of course, there's always a chance that I'm wrong and I'm completely, off with this and we see something completely different. But for now, I am going to take these with some truth to them. It does sound about right. Now, with that being said then, what we talked about earlier in the video with Bethesda's history and where they're kind of at now, how is this game going to fare when it comes to the community? One thing we have to note is this game has taken a long time to come out. Now, when that happens with video games and development companies, that builds hype, it builds tension, it builds, people wanting the game, to keep it simple. When that happens then, every year that people are forced to wait, that game is going to have to be a lot more better to meet expectations, because as time goes on, expectations get higher. The reason for this then is because people, when they wait with these companies and for these titles like Bethesda, every year that is wasted, we believe that's a year in development, so the expectations naturally go up because we feel like there's a year of work being put into the game. Now, that might be necessarily true, it might not be, but that's just the, the fact of the matter is the hype goes up, the expectations go up. Now, like we've talked about Starfield earlier, is Elder Scrolls 6 going to be another Starfield? Is it going to be too much hype and too much expectation, and will it flop? Me personally, I don't think a title like Elder Scrolls 6 is going to flop in a sense. I do feel like there is going to be a lot of room for critics to move, especially with the time it took to come out and the procedural generation being used. We still don't know if there's any AI being used in the development of this game, and I'm sure a lot of people will have issues with that depending on the type of AI that they're using. All in all, me personally, I don't think Elder Scrolls 6 is going to flop. However, I do feel like there is that risk. I feel like there is a risk that this title can flop just based off the hype alone and the time it's taken to release this, where Todd Howard's headspace has been at, where the game has been going, where Bethesda titles have been going in the past, especially with Starfield and its art direction and its character design. If these are the same developers and it's the same motto and it's the same, headspace that they've been in for these past years, I do feel like Elder Scrolls 6 is at risk. That being said though, that's going to be all for me on this video. I did want to keep it short and try and get into a couple things regarding Bethesda, mainly focusing on these leaks, but that's just my opinion. In conclusion then, I think Elder Scrolls 6 is at a risk that Bethesda titles have never been before, because if we look in history, okay, back into the good old days of gaming in the early 2000s when games were solid and came out in good time, we had Morrowind in 2002, Oblivion came out in 2006, 2 years later we had Fallout 3, then 2 years later we had Fallout New Vegas, 1 year later we had Skyrim, 4 years later we had Fallout 4. Now I understand the games are getting bigger and better as time goes on, but it's always good to look back at when we had solid delivered titles on a good timeline. So looking at Bethesda's prime years and looking at some of the things in the past that we talked about earlier in the video, including Starfield and these leaks, all of this combined with the fans' wants and needs when it comes to this next title, Bethesda have so much on their plate to prove, and I'm not surprised it's taken this long despite, my problems with it. Bethesda are going to have to prove so much with this title. It's going to have to be bigger and better. It's going to have to be a lot more well done than Starfield, and it's going to have to meet fans' expectations. All in all, in conclusion then, Bethesda, when it comes to Elder Scrolls 6, I do think they are at a risk of flop. I do think there is that chance that when this game releases, it's going to be all over social media, all over Twitter about the problems, about why it's bad. And that's like an alternate universe, honestly. That might happen, it might not happen, but I think the risk is there coming up to this release. That's going to be it for me for the video. I do thank you very much if you've made it this far all the way to the end. I do enjoy making these videos, and hopefully in the future we can look at Ubisoft and some other development companies and how they've been acting in modern times compared to what we remember in the past. But other than that, guys, again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.